So let's start. Let's declare this Audit, Risk and Finance Committee open. And Your Worship, would you like to say the karakia, please?
Certainly. Kia hora te marano, kia whakapapu pounamu te moana, hei ho rahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, araha atu araha mai tātou I a tātou katoa.
Thank you. I understand we've got two apologies, Councillor David and Councillor Jonathan. Can we have a mover for those, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Anna. Who's got the fastest hand? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, carried. Confirmation of the agenda. There's no additional items for the agenda. What I propose to do is around about 11 o'clock-ish, depending on where we are on the agenda, take a 5-10 minute break, give people time to stretch their legs, maybe grab another coffee if required, drink of water, etc., and then proceed, and we'll see where we get to in terms of, do we need to stop around 12:30, or depending on where we are in terms of how close we are to finishing the agenda. So that's my meeting plan. I hope that suits everyone.
Yep.
Confirmation of the open minutes held 9th of December, page 2.
Sorry, through the chair, can we please have a mover and seconder to confirm the agenda, please?
Oh, thank you. I'll move. Councillor Anna.
Yep.
Those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Conflicts of interest declaration. There are no items with requiring decisions that there's a conflict. Thank you. Confirmation of the open minutes held 9th of December, page 2 onwards. Any items of correction, comment? There are none.
Yeah, correct record.
So, thank you, Councillor Petty. You're moving?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Councillor Wethy left the meeting at 10:33 a.m. So he may not be able to pass through an accurate record.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Your Worship. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Our resolution of page 8, our past audit recommendations. Sue's not online. Hey, Graham, are you able to speak to this one? Or
probably some of them, Mr. Chairman. It'll be a matter of whether there's any questions
Yep.
around
Thank you.
yeah. Progress. Yeah.
Are there any questions from members on any of the items?
1 minute.
Councillor Anna?
Thanks. It's just a minor point, but just on the on page 11 of the agenda, under Land Information Memorandum Audit, the first item that says Council's Magic software is a shared system. However, it's not used by all departments. Digitising the property and consent files and having them available in Te Aka will speed up the process. A separate shared system is not possible currently. And that's marked as completed or ongoing, but there's no kind of date around that. So I just wondered if officers were able to comment on how is that actually going to get resolved, or is there a time frame, or is it something that we're just not going to do?
So through the chair, I can probably give a little bit of, oh, sorry, Jason, were you going to go?
I can, Louise, if you'd like.
Oh.
Sweet, happy days. So this is also tied up with a digitisation project that brought funding forward in the in this annual plan, hopefully, for future decision making and getting the scanning done. So we are scanning a lot of building files at the moment, and with the additional funding, assuming it goes okay in the annual plan, we'll be able to sort of complete that. The Magic software is a shared system, and it will continue to be a shared system, but we're working on making sure that we're digitising all those building files.
Excellent. I'm not sure how you mute, so just careful what you say, okay? Okay, thanks. Bye. No worries, Peter.
Hope that answers your question, Councillor Curnow.
Yes, it's just any sort of idea of time frame, or is it just one of those projects that's just ticking along in the background?
So we're aiming to digitize as much as we can in the next financial year, hence that funding. And obviously it's tied up with the 42 Hokianga Road and the demolition of that. So we can put a time frame around that if you'd like for future reports. But that's the timing we're looking at.
That'd be great. I get uncomfortable with projects that are left hanging. I like an end date. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, it's 2.7 of the risk register, and it's relating to the review of community loans. And it's been flagged that we've been approached by the Mangawhai Museum relating to their outstanding loan. And obviously, a lot of these community groups with COVID are really struggling financially. Have we got any other loans, or is there an update on this one with the museum? Because that's probably one of the larger ones, but also other loans that have been made over the years to community organisations. Is there a review being undertaken of that to look at whether our risk profile of recovering of those loans is being in any way at issue because of the COVID effects?
Mr. Chairman, I can talk.
Thank you, Graham.
I met with the museum, must have been a good 6 months back now. They were going to do some more work and come back to us with some proposals. They're still working on it. I haven't heard any more. I had an update or an email from them just after Christmas saying that they're still working through that at the moment. The loan in question, I think it matures June this year or June next year, it might be. I think it's another year and a bit to go. So they were just sort of working out where they stood and what we could do to help them with that. So at the moment, we're just waiting for them. There is one other loan that I'm aware of. It's about $10,000 and it relates to a hall, I recall. It was mentioned in the annual report. I can't think of the one off the top of my head at the moment. That's the only other one we've got. So there's this one and one other for about $10,000.
And this one of the museum is it? And I'm not stretching I can't remember whether it's one or two blocks of $50,000.
It's all the records that I've got. It was all just one block of 100K.
Okay, it's one. All right.
And it was interest only, and then principal was all due at the end of it. They're wanting to know what options they can do when the maturity comes up. So whether we go to a table mortgage at that point or how we handle things at that point.
Okay, thanks, Graham.
Just on that point, I think it's fair to say, Graham, that we've got every annual report, you've got to do an assessment of your collectability of your debt. So come as the preparation of the annual report, I'm sure Graham will be looking at that and then probably report back through to this committee in terms of if there's any uncollectability.
Correct. Yes, and part of the last year's annual report, we actually made the other one, we actually provided for it completely. So it is overdue in terms of when it was due to be repaid. So it is still on the books as a loan, but we have provided for it already. The Mangawhai one, we haven't as yet because it's not due for repayment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure, Graham, if you can answer my question or if we need Sue. I was just interested on page 7 of the updates and the recommendations, the financial training at employee induction. It just seems to be the only task throughout the entire update that possibly isn't going to be, I get the feeling it's not going to be acted on, or just from the description there, or have I got the wrong impression?
It does occur. We do training. We don't have a formal training regime. We don't have a, it is part of induction. So when somebody comes in, we will show them how to raise purchase orders if they're a budget manager. Our finance team will sit with them if they are in control of their budget, and how to manage their reports and where to get the data from. And we meet with them monthly anyway. I think the recommendation that the auditors gave us was more around establishing a formal training regime to roll out across the whole organisation. We haven't done that yet. It's just resource-wise across the business at the moment. But it's not like people come in and they don't know what to do. We definitely do that. We handhold as they go. And we, as I say, we meet with all budget managers monthly to review all of their numbers. And the finance team is available for questions if they've got them at any point. Yeah.
So it's basically one of those recommendations from the auditors that you're comfortable.
It's real nice to have. Yeah. It's the belt and braces approach that the auditors take. They're just trying to tick off all the boxes. Yeah.
Oh yes, lots of experience with auditors I have, Graham. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? I've got another one, Graham, on page 18 of the agenda, item 1.12, supplier master file check. It's not started. We'll consider that in the next financial year, and you've got estimation complete of April 22. Is April 22 still realistic, considering it's next month and everything else that's happening in your world?
No, it's not. No, we'll need to amend that. Yeah,
like I agree that I think I raised this last time. Would actually be nice to sort of have an estimate for the ones that are in progress, an estimated completion date. I know to the CE this is going to be a challenge with the environment, but hopefully we can get back to business as usual sometime in May to June, and then play catch up. So just expecting everything to be done tomorrow, but I think it would be nice. And my other suggestion is, I'll probably take it offline, is maybe we have a bit of a summary, and I'm not shame Sue can't be online, but a bit of a summary of the number that we have considered that are in progress, not started, or scheduled to be completed shortly, just so we've got a bit of a progress report, how progress we're actually making over the year, how many items we actually get cleared. I think would give the committee some comfort that things are actually being ticked off, because once they're ticked off, we tend to forget about it. But I'm happy to have a discussion with Sue offline, Louise, if that's okay with you. And the rest of the committee, obviously.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions on that paper?
No.
So I'm just trying to manage my agenda on screens here. So we've got a recommendation back on page 8. The Audit, Risk and Finance Committee. Oh, thank you, Gavin. The Audit, Risk and Finance Committee notes the resolution of past audit recommendations. Can I have a mover for that, please?
Yeah, I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Seconded, Councillor Aaron. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, carried. Thank you, Gavin. Our next item is the Treasury Management Report on page 22. Graham, do you want to talk to this one?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the key thing to note here is we've had a swap that matured in January. We've been in contact with our advisors, PwC, and spoken to them about whether they thought it was worthwhile to take out a new one. Their recommendation was that we don't at the moment, which I agree with. There's too much uncertainty around interest rate movements, the three waters, what's going to happen with our debt. The swap that matured was in the 3 to 5 year range, so it puts us slightly out of policy. So instead of being having 30% of our debt fixed at that rate, we've only got 28%, so we're 2% under. We're recommending here that, our Treasury management policy says that we're allowed to be out of policy for 90 days. If we're going to be out of policy for more than 90 days, we need to seek council approval to have it out of policy. So, which is why we've got the recommendation in the report. Yeah, so that's the key thing to note with the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering about the impact of Three Waters and whether work is going on in the background to kind of understand what that's likely to be and whether we need to do anything in advance of that, because that's going to be like a seismic event in our debt profile if it happens the way they're suggesting it does. And I'm just wondering, sort of, at what point do we say, right, we need to have a really hard look at this and figure out what that means, and do we need to start doing things in advance? Yeah.
So through the chair, I can probably answer that. I mean, Graham might want to answer the details, although I don't believe there's many details at the moment. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we've got a project set up and Sue's leading out the Three Waters. So there's nothing to be done yet because, as you will see from Mr. Mayor's communique yesterday, there's still a long way to go in this. But certainly we are very much across this, and Northern Waters are looking at that as a separate group. But at this stage, no, nothing to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Jason.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two things. There's a typo error in the recommendation B here, which would need to be changed, please, which is that council, quote here, recommends to council, comma, in accordance with the Treasury policy, comma, that it approves. Either it or council approves, that rather than that is approves. Okay, it's a minor little typo, but before we get to that, please,
thank you.
Just from the point of view of, I would say that council approves.
Okay.
Right, really, I would be grammatically correct, because then you're saying who should be approving, because otherwise, logically, you're saying that the committee should approve, that the committee should approve it. So it was written wrong in the first place, even if it had been it.
I've actually got a further suggestion on the recommendation, and I was going to ask Graham, do we expect that we will actually come back into policy, or that we will remain outside of policy?
At the moment, we will remain outside policy. There's no debt to be repaid until 2023, so our profile will stay the same until at least 2023.
So maybe I think if we can actually, we have got to move in a second yet, but maybe we actually just need to note at the end of that, thanks Gavin, right, that this will remain until, we've got to put you on the spot.
2023.
2023?
Yeah,
just at the end of that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we don't, having noted that, we don't need to keep every meeting circling back to say we're actually outside of policy. I think the wording is that we note that this will remain until 2023. Have you got a month or indicative time, quarter?
June.
Graham?
It'll be June.
June, thank you.
Yeah.
Remain until June. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further comments on the report? Mayor Jason, you still got your hand up? Is that? No, that's all right.
Sorry, yes, yes, Mr. Chair. Yeah. In the substance of the report here, I was seeking information here on page 2 regarding the current net debt figure being $24 million and just seeking clarification on that. And then I've got another very simple question.
Okay, thank you.
So the net debt will be taking our external debt less the cash that we have on hand to give us our net position. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then in the attached report here on page 26 or page 5, the funding and liquidity position, where the coloured charts are, page 26 of the total agenda, you've got the liquidity summary is 134%. And then the LGFA liquidity summary is 157%. Is that the total, is the first figure kaipara and then the total figure of the total LGFA 157%? Is that what that means?
I'm not 100% sure. I would need to check that one and come back to you on that one.
Thank you, because you've got, going back to my first question, you've got the actual liquidity ratio on page 2 of the agenda of this item, sorry, page 23 of the agenda, at 134%, page 2 of the item. And then, like I say, it's just this question of the LGFA liquidity summary. So if that's at 157%, then we're what would you say, below average. There we are, among other things. Is that a fair analysis? Mr. Chairman, perhaps you, with your experience across the Motu, would be able to provide some comment here. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a sort of another question back to Graham. Do you actually have any standby facilities with any bank or LGFA that you haven't currently used?
We do have 2 standbys with Westpac and ANZ. That's the 10 million at the front. That's the yellow graph of that yellow column. That's the only facilities we have. We don't have any with the LGFA.
I'm not sure whether this answers the question, but technically a liquidity ratio is your ability to meet your short-term cash your ability to meet your debts from available cash. I know some councils include the unused facilities as additional amount that's available. Now, maybe that's what I think LGFA in terms of their covenant allow you to do that. I'm not sure, Graham, and that could actually be the answer.
I will confirm, because we've extracted these from our PwC report, and we'll put a definition in here so we know exactly what these are made up of.
Good idea.
I know that it depends on the council. The number of Treasury policies that I have been involved in previously, I've always referred to the liquidity ratio for reporting purposes, that it all should actually include the unused facility, because that's sort of almost like cash in hand, but it's not. So you can actually ring the bank at 3 o'clock and the money will be in your bank account by 4. So it's the same as cash. Not all right. So Graham, you'll just circulate that by email, I think, to the members. Would be appreciated.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions on the Treasury report? So we go back to the recommendation. Thanks, Gavin. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Thank you, Mayor Jason. Do I have a seconder? I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Our next item is our quarterly debtors report. Welcome, Christine.
Morena. I'll take the report as being read, but just a few notes that I've made, noting that the land rates debt since June 21 is reduced by 2.4 million, and since the last report, 720k has reduced across all of our roles. The water rates, I'm just noting our 90-day debt has decreased by 190k since the last report. That's predominantly due to our mortgagee process, which has been improved since previous years. We put a focus on the water this time from a different angle than what we've done in the past anyway, so that's helped us out, which is good. Noting also a sundry debt increase of in the current invoices that aren't due. That's predominantly influenced by a large invoices to government agencies, so we've got a lot of that coming through. I did note in the report that 1.4 million was misallocated, a payment of 1.4 million was misallocated during January. That has been addressed. We've paid that, put that against the invoices that were required to be paid. And the sundry debt includes large invoices again to government agencies that we're monitoring as a team to make sure that when the payments come in, they're allocated correctly, and that we're following up to make sure that government agencies have everything they need from us to ensure that they can make those payments. And those were my notes. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Peter?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Christine, you might be able to answer this. I'm looking at the table you've got there on the arrears debt. And firstly, it's very pleasing to see that between the 31st of October last year and the 31st of January this year, we've had, you know, as you say, over $700,000 improvement in terms of our collections. However, our annual rates are forecast, just the rate collection, at about 41.5 million. So 4.445 million still in arrears represents just on 11% of our total annual rates collection. Have we got any idea how this stacks up with normal arrears with other councils? Because 11% is still quite a significant percentage.
Right, it is quite high, and I do believe that we sit quite high in our debt space. Mr. Chair might be able to have a comment on that too, from what he's seen around the country.
Yes, certainly. I think the problem that Northland councils have is the second line, the Maori freehold land. You can see that that makes up of the 4.5 million, makes up almost 3 million, being generous. I would say that I agree with Christine, it is probably on the high side, but what I do note, right, it's actually the mortgaged properties are coming down significantly, and I think that's a real positive bit. You know, and you know, when you look at it, the other is also coming down. So this is significant work in progress. And I think this is it's on page 33 of the agenda. I think this is actually a good news story, but it takes a long time for action to be taken. I mean, we can't just go and recover huge amounts of debt immediately, and I think this is a good start. It'd be interesting, Christine, maybe next time, if we could go back a number of years and just show us some graphs how it's actually tracking down consistently over a number of years, I think would be useful.
Sure.
Mayor Jason?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. The question or point that I'd like to make here is that I agree this is a very good news story, and that we are at risk of slightly comparing apples with oranges if we look at this total dollar figure, which is accumulated over 6 years, or 5 years. I'm going to say basically it's 6 years, and then you take a year off, yeah. And so it's always creeping, but that's what that number is. So if you take the total rate take across those same 6 years, yeah, and put this figure against that, that would give you a proportional figure, if you like, rather than across 1 year of rates as to how this debt sits. If that makes sense. That I'm talking there from the revenue rating perspective, not from a debt perspective. But
yeah,
so it's a very challenging calculation and for us all. And the second thing is, in my understandings, is that of course the Far North District Council has significantly higher unpaid debts because of its Maori freehold land, which is quantum leaps higher than this, and it's a substantial issue for local government, which really can't be fixed, I don't think, but there is that system there. And so Christine, maybe like I say, if I'll just conclude my statement, I think this is a very good news story and you're making amazing progress in a really challenging space. I'd say, Christine, maybe there could be an option there to just have a line in here saying that this total figure is not to be read in a 1 year sense, but in comparison with 6 years of rates income.
sure.
It would line up with that figure. Maybe you could provide a comment there on that, Christine, but thank you for great work.
Thank you. Thank you to the team as well. You know, of course, it's not just me. Yeah.
And I just making a further comment. Not only is it just rates, it's also penalties on those rates. And I assume, Christine, you're doing 10% twice a year.
Correct.
So while, you know, the longer the rate is outstanding and it might not be collectible, of that $2.9 million, and this is going to follow on from Mayor Jason's request, might be a little bit difficult, is how much of that is actually really rates and how much of that is actually penalties.
Yeah, we can do that.
Because that to me is actually the telling story, because it doesn't take long. If you've got $100 of rates outstanding, it doesn't take too many years at 10%. At 10% every 6 months compounded for that $100 to turn it into $500.
Great. Sure.
Councillor Anna?
Yeah, I just had a question about the abandoned land and the statement in the papers that the intention is to have the process completed this year. How is that going, given that I know we are struggling with resources across the board? How is that going?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it is a struggle, and unfortunately, I probably need to review the wording in there. I am not confident that we will be able to get to that this year. Yeah, resourcing is an issue, and we are facing the real challenges associated with COVID. So, yeah, we're struggling.
Yeah, I thought that seemed like that might be a bit of an ambitious target.
But I'm optimistic. Yeah, my apologies.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Christine? Christine, I've got one. If we go down to on page 37 of the agenda, page 8 of your report, and the number that worries me, and maybe you want to comment on this maybe in the future, is you're talking about the resource consents are not necessarily collectible on the due dates, and it makes up 64%. Those over 90 days, 64% of the total. I wonder whether you'd want to comment on, do you actually have a due date for those amounts, and are they really overdue, or when are they likely to be overdue? Because you and I know from previous experience, sometimes if the resource consent isn't issued or it becomes difficult to collect at a later date, whether you've got any comments on that? Or you might want to do some research and come back to this at the next meeting.
Potentially, yes. It is a concern of ours, the resource consent space, just due to the open-endedness that can occur around objections and so forth. So it is difficult. I can look into that in more detail for next time, though. Yeah.
Yeah, because it can creep up.
Mm.
Councillor Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just on that same chart, Christine, you made the comment that in the sundry debtors, the government agencies are actually a bit slow at this time, that time of the year. But that'll be relating, I guess, more to the current and the 30 days. I guess what's concerning is that in the 60 to 90 days, you've got basically 10% of the total sundry debtors that are overdue. Now, the 300,000 that are 90 days out, I'm sure they won't be government departments. They must be a multitude of other little debtors. Have we got any action in place to recover that?
Yeah, so the team are following those up, and they are complex, a lot of those. Some of them have been referred on to our third-party debt collection agency. We make a note that we're not seeing a lot of payments coming through that because they've got to the very hard stage. We're still putting them with the third-party debt collection, however, because that puts a default against them, and that kind of gives us there's a bit of motivation for the smaller types of not ratepayers but customers that are in that group to pay that debt once they want to go and get another loan, for example. So that's really the benefit of the third party. But definitely we are keeping an eye on those. It does again come down to resourcing, but they're definitely on the radar, and we're not just leaving them sitting there.
Well, the financial impact of a lot of small businesses that COVID's bringing, there could be defaults and business failures, and I just want to keep a very close eye on that figure, I think, to make sure that we don't get too badly burnt.
Yep, thank you. Any further questions? We can go back to the resolution. Thank you. Gavin? So we've got a recommendation there. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Jason. Seconded, thank Councillor Anna. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Thank you. Next item is our quarterly finance report. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report has been to council, went to the last council meeting, but happy to take any further questions. And you wouldn't have seen it before, so happy to take any questions from yourself or the rest of the committee.
My only question on this, and it's probably unfortunately for Louise that Sue's not online, it's the bit that worries me is our capital expenditure. And I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I think it might have made the press by now, that one council has a capital works program of 54 million and they've only completed 8 million by the end of January. And I just wonder, what's the overall CapEx doability by the end of a financial year, and are there any significant subsequent risks in not delivering the capital works program?
So through the chair, probably the short answer is yes, there are, and no, we won't. And this has been a conversation, so we discuss this regularly at council. Council have asked us to include more information about forecasts and where projects are at, which we didn't get into this report or for the last months, but we are trying to do that. So we're much clearer about what is and isn't going to go ahead. It came up at my REM committee, and I know that the REM committee are one of the actions was that Councillor Will suggested was that we work together to actually identify what are the key projects that we do need to get across the line. And just focus on delivering those. For us, obviously, PGF and external funding is our key priority because we don't want to lose those. And at the moment, we're doing reasonably well. There are a couple of risks, but we are doing reasonably well. And I think we're looking to probably look at about 16 million, I think, carry forwards So, but Sue and the team are still working on that. So, so yes, we are aware of it. We're doing everything we can to stop it, and we're trying to be as transparent as we can with elected members as to where the big risks are.
Thank you. Any comments from committee members? No, seen it all before, debated all before. Thank you. It's nice. Yeah, I mean, that to me is, you know, and as Louise said, to me, this is a consistent risk right across the whole of, I would actually say, right across just about every sector. The ability to, not just local government sector, not central government, but every sector to deliver their capital projects. It's quite scary up there in terms of trying to get stuff. And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, particularly over the short term with, you know, now we've got significant number of workers self-isolating. I understand that just for example, number of couriers in Auckland are now and have an ability to actually collect parcels because there's not enough couriers on the road to actually do even the basics. So no further discussion. Can I have the recommendation up on the screen? Thank you, Gavin.
Move.
Oh, thank you. You're moving it. Thank you, Councillor Peter.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder? Can't see everybody, so I'll second. No further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Our health and safety report on page 48.
Yes, morning everyone. Hannah here. For some reason it's not connecting my video. Hang on. Through the chair, while I fix my video, there'll be two updates as part of this paper. One, Louise CE providing an update on our business continuity planning with Omicron and COVID. So I might ask Louise to do that first while I sort my video out, and then I'll talk about the update. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Louise.
So through the chair, happy to do that. So I think we've probably spoken before about some of our plans, but just to kind of recap. So each department's undertaken their own business continuity plan. We went through a process where we've issued masks and wipes to our critical workers. We've got a list of who our critical workers are, and they've been our focus. We've identified to say what we need to do in terms of complying with central government direction and legislation, and we keep abreast of that because that changes quite regularly. ET and the whole organisation have been separated into bubbles, so you won't see, when we were meeting, you wouldn't have seen the whole of ET in one place, just to ensure that we can continue should one of our bubbles become either COVID positive or have to isolate. We have had to close some facilities, largely due to people isolating, not necessarily due to direct COVID cases, and people awaiting tests. But we're making sure that we utilise social media to let people know that as soon as possible, and redeploying staff to help where we can. So we came close to having to close Kaiwi Lakes at the weekend. And, you know, it was kind of almost to the point of ET, including myself, volunteering to go down there and clean toilets. So everyone's just doing what they can to keep things running. We're not out of the woods yet. It's from the regional leadership group. The suggestion is we're probably another couple of weeks away before Northland hits its peak. So I'm sure what we're seeing will continue into the future. Obviously, this is an example. We're putting everything online where we can and encouraging people to work from home and not to mix and mingle. I provide regular updates to our staff. When it's urgent, it goes out via text message and then is followed up by an email. We have weekly or bi-weekly tier 3, tier 4 calls where ET and I talk to the tier 3 managers about issues, and we try and resolve things and give them updates on progress. We've identified, obviously, our vaccine policy and the mandates. That was done before Christmas and is rolled out. But as I've said, we're happy to keep reviewing that. We get regular updates through from the COVID response team and Taitura, and we just adapt and adopt new direction as and when we can. We've got our levy policy for COVID, and we've got a COVID dedicated section for staff on the intranet, as well as a COVID little response group that tend to lead out our responses to the latest changes. So I guess in summary, we've got everything that we could possibly have, but we can't stop people isolating and we can't stop people being infected. And so we just roll with the punches and just make sure that we get early comms out to the community so that they're impacted to the least extent possible. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. Any questions of Louise? Councillor Victoria?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Louise, for that update. I was just wondering about the comment you mentioned at another meeting whereby some of our staffing issues could be resolved by the fact that we haven't mandated fully, and that could allow us some strategic recruitment advantage.
So yeah, we're looking at everything at the moment. I would say probably the potential that I'd hope that might give us, it hasn't materialized because most people are now working online. And I think for many organizations, the numbers of people that have left the organization through mandates are probably a bit more limited, but it's absolute. We're looking at everything, and we will be bringing a paper through to elected members to talk about our retention attraction policy and what we might want to look at during the next annual plan. So thank you.
And another question on that note, the High Court case with the Defence Force and the police, have you considered the ramifications that may have on the policy that you've enacted through health and safety?
So yeah, the policy we enacted came through from Simpson Grierson's advice. So I'm really solid that we took the right action with good legal advice at the right time. Things are changing. We, touch wood, it was only a limited number of people that were impacted. Whilst that's very big for them, our risk hopefully has been reduced, and we await to see what comes of these High Court rulings. It's not a surprise that things are going this way, but we will obviously respond as more information becomes available and we get clearer direction from our legal advisors, Simpson Grierson, who have been next to us all the way through this process.
So, and the other question I have, which is my last question on this point, is how is it that other councils like Auckland Council, for example, handled the COVID situation mandates via a political decision, whereas our council's gone via you as the chief executive, essentially taking it out of local representation and democratic purview?
So through the chair, no, we've covered this previously. That's entirely up to each organisation, and I believe it's an operational decision, and that's why I took that decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. I concur with your answer on that one. All my other committees, it's been the chief executive is the employer. He or she is responsible for the well-being of all their staff, and it's their responsibility. There is some discussion that council needs to have, but the final decision in terms of risk remains with the CE. From a health and safety issue, she's the one who goes to jail, not us. Also, I've got a question on that. For my sins, I rove around a number of councils. If I was to visit one particular council, I would need to rock up there 20 minutes beforehand to have a little rat or a rapid antigen test before I could actually enter that building. Is that something you're considering, Louise?
So yeah, short answer. We've always been very much of the view we're a small council. We don't want to be leading edge, but we do respond to those, and we want to be inclusive as we can. Obviously, with up until recently, rats was not an option. At the moment, we're not meeting physically, so it's not an issue, but certainly something for us to consider once we're back in person.
Yeah, this was actually quite a small council. That's their policy, but again, they're doing the same process generally as you. They're meeting online. The they've split their management team and staff into two bubbles. So you've got the management team won't actually see each other physically for quite some time. Any other questions of Louise? Thank you, Louise. Refer back to Hannah on the health and the remainder of the health and safety update report. Are there any key issues you want to bring to us? We take your report as read. Hannah?
Yeah, sure. So I'll, through the chair, I'll just give a couple of highlights. So you would have seen there was a couple of attachments there. You'll see that majority of the incidents coming through are in the contractor space. And we're working closely with UCC, which is United Civil Contracting, and Ventia, on how we can prevent that and what's the lessons learnt coming out of those incidents. We are waiting on final reports. And then the overspeeds. So you'll, on that report, you would have seen there's quite a high number there in one particular in the graph. Those overspeeds, and we analyze the data, are mainly coming from where you're going from one speed zone to another. So it will ping straight away. You know, if you go 52, you're going out of 50 zone and start picking up your speed, it will say that's an overspeed. So we're working on that matrix and looking at that data and really making sure that the true overspeeds are coming through and understanding why employees were doing that particular overspeed at the time. But other than that, happy to take questions. I've got Ricky on the meeting too, who's our health and safety specialist.
Thank you, Hannah. Welcome, Ricky. Thank you, Councillor Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just on that, Hannah, on the overspeeds, I looked at that. I presume that any infringement notices that are resulting from overspeeds are to the care of the individual employee, not to council.
Yes, that's correct, and they come through to me.
Yeah, that's good, because I, for my sins, was pinged 8 kilometres an hour above the 50k in Whangarei a couple of weeks ago, and got a princely sum of $30. Now, just looking at some of these, mounts up to quite a lot of money if every one of those was pinged, that's for sure.
No, they're responsible of the driver of that particular vehicle.
Right, good.
Councillor Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Hannah. Hey, I was just, my question is in regards to the, hang on, I'm trying to use my screen to do two different things. Just in regards to the incidents report, and we get a description there of what's happened and when. Were any of those serious? Is there any, because there's no information there about whether any further action is required to be taken or the seriousness of the incident. Was there any, are they all minor? What can you tell us?
Yep. Ricky, do you want to answer that question in particular?
Yeah, so we can definitely take that on board as far as the reporting process is concerned. I just want to note also, when we are reporting the level of risk associated with activity in our network, that there is a lot more detail that's dissected in consultation with the line manager and the health and safety rep via the health and safety committee. So I've noted that and definitely take it as an action to provide the risk matrix in accordance with the incident.
Yeah, awesome. You know, I'm sure you guys have all the information and are dealing with it in a succinct manner. But yeah, just it doesn't quite give us any risk to be looking at as the Audit and Risk Committee as it presents at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. On page 51 of the agenda, at the table at the top, the line legal compliance says that there is a requirement that council maintains a health and safety legal register, but that does not currently exist. How serious an issue is that? Because it was due for fixing in December 21, apparently.
One moment, I'm just going down to it.
Page 51, top of.
page 4 of your report.
Yes. Ricky, do you want to add your comment?
Sure. Sorry, just sorting out my IT equipment to unmute myself. Yes, I'm happy to. So that comment is made in line with our quality management ISO standards, and the fact that we've just gone through a process in consultation with our risk manager, Graham Coleman, to develop and update our risk register. So we are in the process of developing that legal register to make sure that all risks that council are responsible for and we've got on the coalface, which tasks are being carried out on our behalf, are actually noted. So it is a process and a action that's taken as a result of developing and updating that risk register. And I'm sure Graham, who's on the call as well, we went through the process of updating the risk register last year. And as a result of that, there's follow-on actions of developing that legal register, of making sure all the standards that we're responsible for in line with the tasks being carried out on our behalf is developed and approved by not just ET, the OHS committee that's currently in effect, and the council members.
Right. And according to this report, it was due by December last year. How is progress on that?
So the progress has been in line with the COVID pandemic. We have actually run behind on that schedule. So as far as our progress on developing that legal register, we could say that in line with our response to COVID, that it will be available as a draft within the next 6 months.
Okay. All right. So that it's in hand, but it's running behind. Are there any implications to it not being there? Are we in breach of anything by not having it there, other than our ISO 45001 or 0001?
So as far as our quality management requirements, the quality management aspect, when we're looking at what my original key performance indicator was for my position description, was to align KDC with ACC's requirement as a approved employer under ACC guidelines. And that does put us behind as far as that goal was. And the desired outcome while I was KDC's subject matter expert in health and safety. However, from a legal perspective, we are compliant from a PCBU as far as obligations are concerned in the Health and Safety at Work Act.
Okay, that's cool. And then if I can jump to page 60 with the calendar of activities that you do in the organisation just to keep health and safety top of mind. How's that going? Because obviously that must be challenging to continue under the current circumstances.
So when you ask how that's going, yes, there is a high workload in regards to who's taking ownership of the leading indicators when we're looking at this calendar. However, the focus primarily is in line with the feedback that we've had from those line managers, that in the history of working in KDC, the leading indicators that are aligned with the position description of those leaders' key performance indicators has been absent. So what we do with this calendar, and it's true of the minutes that we covered in this last month's Health and Safety Committee, is focus on how we can support those leaders in communicating these themes over the months that are indicated in that calendar. So I think we're on track. However, we are thin on the ground and rolling with the punches with the current pandemic requirements of COVID. And we are mindful of that when we're looking at what workload is required of those leaders and how they're communicating our response to each of these risks indicated in each month.
Okay. Yeah.
And through the chair, just to add to that, so each month you'll see at the top there in black a particular theme, and that's when we review those standards that are in place. So you'll see driving came through in October. That's when we started to look at the overspeeds and risk matrix and work with this health and safety committee on how we put further controls in our on that particular risk. Yeah.
So, but the program is rolling along in line with that calendar. That's good. And then finally, just I think if I can go to page 52 with the next steps, I think last time we might have made a comment about, is it possible to, that's like a really substantial list, and whether it's possible to sort of prioritize, to show priority or expected timeframes on those, just because when I look at that, I feel overwhelmed and I'm not responsible for actually doing it. So I'm just wondering, how, the doability of this and how does that get expressed in that list? Because that's a substantial list of work.
Yeah, so through the chair, Anna, we Councillor Curnow, sorry, we added an attachment. You'll see it is number 7, health and safety timeline there, where we've outlined what our focus is for January to March this year, to try and, like you say, what's the focus out of that long list that we have there. But I'll take an action for next committee meeting to go back to the format and update this timeline as well, so it all links in together.
Yeah. Sorry, I hadn't joined those two dots, so it's helpful to know that is the next steps timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anna. Mayor Jason.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question in the context part at the very top of the report here. And so it's a question, I guess, it's going to be directed for possibly Mr. Maris or for Louise. And it's about the statement here that under the Health and Safety at Work Act, all elected members are deemed officers and must exercise a duty of due diligence in relation to health and safety. Kapai, that's all good. Is there a broader explanation of this externally somewhere that we could have, so that elected members are crystal clear on this, and also in advance of the elections later this year, that any potential new candidates would also be aware of exactly these matters, and what it means? Because it's interesting for me to see this in writing. So perhaps Mr. Maris, a comment, or from Louise from the Taituara workforce work that you're doing there may be a resource that could help here to answer this question. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may. Elected members may recall we had Simpson and Grierson do a development session on health and safety and your responsibilities in this space. That material still remains, there was a presentation and material still remains in the portal, so I can dig that up and send it out to you if you'd like. That's available for you to refresh your memories if you'd like. As far as future for the candidates, we'll include that as part of the candidate briefs, I suppose, and the material around that about what it means to be an elected member and the responsibilities of. Kia ora.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions of Hannah or Ricky? Just going back to those overspeeds, because of my sins, I see this regularly, right? And I agree that it is a problematic when you're actually looking at the area within the transition from 100, whenever you've got the speed going up or down. Is there any ability, I'm not sure who you use, whether you can actually get, because I see this all the time, whether the supplier could actually do some analytics and actually remove that from their data to start with, or provide that as an extra field rather than you actually having to identify it manually? because I see it as a consistent problem across just about every organisation.
Yeah, so through the chair, I'll take that as an action
Yeah.
to take away. I'm not sure we've done that work. Yeah, I'll need to double check.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether I'm not sure who your supplier is. Some of them are more receptive to doing specific stuff, and others are not. I declare a previous conflict of interest. My son used to work for one of the providers a number of years ago, so I do have a little bit of insight into the work he was doing for them.
Okay, no, that's good feedback. I'll take that off. We use a smart track, so
yep.
Yeah.
All right, I might talk to you offline. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Any other questions on our health and safety update? There being none, can I have, thank you, a mover for the recommendation? Thank you, Mayor Jason. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, I can't see everybody. They sort of disappeared off the screen. If you could just yell out a name, please.
Yes, I'm waving.
Oh, sorry, I can't see who's waving at the moment. Somehow it's disappeared on me. Oh, there you are. Thank you, Councillor Anna. All right. Although no further discussion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Our next item on the agenda is our policy register review update, page 66.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we would normally have Linda come in for this. I can't see if she's here or not. And I do believe Sue's joined by phone, so just so that you're aware as well.
Yeah, I guess I see her coming and going on phone. So welcome, Sue.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Happy days. So in the absence of Linda, unless she comes on, I'll take over here. Look, I'm not the detailed expert on this one. Linda looks after the policy program, but this is a report that comes to you every 6 months. Gives you an update of where we're at and the progress with the policies and updates since. The discussion part of the report has the what's happened since the last update to this committee. So I'll take it as read, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that you fire at me.
All right. Noting that, thank you, Jason. Any questions of Jason being where he doesn't have all the expert? I do actually have one. If no one else has got any questions on it. Oh, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, Jason, you might be able to clarify this in the procurement policy, which is apparently you're saying in the comments here, because that's one that's overdue and it's of reasonably significant impact, obviously. You're talking about a draft policy is intended to be placed to the council briefing agenda in April. Are we still on target for that?
Yes, we are. Thank you for the chair question, Councillor Worthy, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we are. We're on track with that. We've done some considerable work in that space, and we're helped, in fact, by our colleagues at WDC and the work that they've done recently. So we're trying to have a good, solid, professional approach here, and that will come to the briefing as well as says in the report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments? I've got a similar comment on the same thing. I actually see the procurement policy, not necessarily the manual, but the procurement policy is actually a key policy that should actually be debated at some stage by the risk committee, and with a specific risk lens over what are the risks around procurement and how are they actually being mitigated against. Whether you've got any comments on that, either Jason or Louise.
So maybe I start, and then Louise can jump in there, Mr. Chair. So what we're doing, we've got a policy and the guidelines. Obviously, there's operationally how we do the policy, and the policies coming to. We're targeting we appreciate the importance of the work actually, and the need to do it and the need to do it properly, because it's an integral part to what we do in the business of council. So at this stage, we've scheduled it in for the council briefing and then the council meeting to get oversight of and approval of. Sadly, the meetings of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee being quarterly doesn't necessarily always lend itself to enable that sort of reporting to occur, Mr. Chair. But you know, we are looking at this work as a matter of priority because we recognise the importance of it. So I'm hoping that we can go through the process and do it with council. No harm in reporting it back to Audit, Risk and Finance subsequent, if that's if you're amenable to that.
I mean, I don't want to. I mean, to me, it's actually the role of this committee is actually that high level risk and how you've identified and mitigated that risk. So maybe a subsequent report, once that policy has been adopted by council, the saying is with a specific risk lens put over that report rather than bringing back the report for this committee to relitigate it. I'm not into that, but I want to make sure that the risks that have been identified through the procurement process are actually being then monitored, well managed. So that's the lens I'm looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heard, and we'll do.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other discussion on that report? We've got a recommendation on page 66. Do I have a mover for that? I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Anna. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Our next item is our regulatory compliance update, page 76. Sue, are you with us still?
Yes, I am. So I can report on this through the chair. Okay. So basically, our regulatory in the regulatory area of resource consents and building consents, we're still meeting our statutory timetables, but that's going to we could see that dropping off as staff are either leaving or and we're having difficulty replacing them, or there might be staff who are susceptible to COVID. I'll report on Kaihuru Water. So there have been some changes there, and that we've recently had a legislation in October 21, which was the latest legal legislation. Well, that means if you're going to give loans or voluntary targeted rates to people, that you have to assess their financial position quite minutely. And we're not in the business or have qualifications to do that. So we've come to the realisation and also taken legal advice that we can't actually issue any more loans from council. So that won't be a solution going forward for this, that we'll have to look at, bring some other solution to council for you. And we're looking at that now. Paparoa, there's ongoing meetings occurring at the moment to look at the potential solution. With infrastructure, you'll see that I've noted there that there's been a couple of abatement notices to do with wastewater. The smell one at Brown Road wastewater storage pond, that we basically sorted that out fairly quickly, and by use of a chemical, and restarted our operation within about 3 days after ceasing it. And also the other one that we've had in Dargaville was related way back to September, but we only got the abatement notice in January, and basically that's to do with requiring a resource consent when there are extremely heavy rains, so that we can discharge into river, because there's too much volume coming through our treatment part. And since subsequent to that, we've had another one just in the last week, which is to do with the Dargaville wastewater plant, and it's with ponding occurring in the wetlands itself. And we're looking at a way that we have to, you know, and how we can fix that. So that's going to mean there's going to be some investment in capital there, potentially. Then I suppose I'll just go down to the procurement policy and highlight that we haven't followed policy with procuring some of our contractors. There's not that many available when it comes to project management.
Yep.
We've got to, so that's just the way it is. There's some, and since I've written this, I checked with regulatory. We've got one person there that we have procured and has gone over the 50,000, and that's just what the case is. And we've also got another environmental an analyst or consultant that's going to be looking at resource consents, and that's going to be by direct appointment as well. So just to let you know that is occurring.
Thank you, Sue. Councillor Anna?
Yeah, I just want to delve a little deeper into those procurement policy breaches, and just wondering whether we should have some kind of a formal thing around reporting on those breaches, and it might be part of the CE's exceptions report on a monthly basis that goes to council, or maybe it comes here, but just sort of feels if we're ad hocing that, then it could just become a little bit more normal and a little bit more normal. Whereas if we exceptions report it, then it's it keeps it top of mind as being an exception rather than sliding into more normal behaviour.
So through the chair, we can put that in the exceptions report. But if anything, what we're hoping you all take from this is the fact that we are getting across it. So it may have been ad hoc before, but the reason it's coming to this committee is because we want to highlight it. So I would hope this is not something that we would be reporting going forwards, because we're going through that procurement strategy review and documentation that you'll see coming up in future meetings. But absolutely, we can include it in the CE report.
Just in the time being while we're getting into that new procurement policy, etc. That seems like a good idea. Yeah, thank you.
But also, just through the chair, it's not an issue just with the procurement. It's the situation we've got with hardly any people that you know, are applying for positions, and so we're having to go to consultants direct, and you end up having them as your consultants for a lot longer term rather than going through a tender process. So that's sort of the issue, I think.
Yeah, I'm not wanting to chuck stones with that. It's just a question of keeping the searchlight on it so that it becomes bigger or less managed. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion here to the CE? And I think this is going to be an ongoing problem for some time with procurement. But it's actually, so in my opinion, the procurement policy should actually have in what happens when you can't comply with the procurement policy and what the procedure is. I think that should actually be in the actual policy itself, and then that will dictate when it is reported and how it's reported and what the procedure is. So it's actually clear and transparent. If we need 3 quotes, we only get 2, what's the procedure? We might need some urgency, what's deemed urgent, etc. So just I've seen that work very effectively before, and when the policy is exceeded, not necessarily breached, then there is a reporting process, and that's actually in the policy. I hope that's useful, Sue and Louise. Councillor Victoria.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Sue, and yeah, my question is for our CE and Sue, you too. Just being more high level about this, what facility do we have or capability in our council to do some cadetships in this area of project management and regulatory, so that we can, you know, there's young people out there that are going to be finishing their courses or could be recruited, and like big brother, little sister kind of relationships, because yeah, I'm not happy with the situation in that regard. And then the other question I have is kind of tying in, it's not related, but how does the externally funded projects and the water projects fit with using a panel, a consultants panel to tender or contract work? Is that outside of policy, or will we look at this whole big thing when you talk about the procurement strategy coming to the full council for review? Thank you.
So firstly, to answer your Councillor Delavaris Woodcock, to answer your question about cadetships, the variety of projects we've got at the moment are really, they need people with a large amount of expertise, but we do have people that have come on and might not have an engineering background but can take on project management, and we've got a couple of those, and they're doing projects like might be the toilets or before, you know, so we wouldn't envisage that they would be doing large externally funded projects. We need engineers for that. And your second question, just trying to think. So we are doing what we can, but even young people, it's hard to get in when you put out recruitment notices. And your second question was about how's the externally funded projects being affected? Is that right? Okay.
Yes, and Three Waters projects as well, where I understand or remember we're using a consultant panel. Is that
right? That's right.
Automatic.
So that's automatic, but that's for the three consultants we've got there for infrastructure, but they're for professional services. We have to have someone on our side representing us. I mean, the professional, that's for professional services of design, or being the engineer's rep. But we need someone within council to basically be the person looking after the council. And so we're needing, we have got quite a number of, I think it's about 6 in the team at the moment. There's one that's just, has just left, but they're managing all of our externally funded projects. They're well under construction. We've got to have them completed by June. So you'll see that the money will be spent over the next few months for those, because that's what we're concentrating on. So just hopeful that we can keep the resources that we have.
Thank you for that answer, Sue.
Thank you, Sue. Any other questions on this item? Thank you. We go back to page 76. We've got a recommendation there. Can I have a mover, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Next item is our proposed work programme, page 82.
So through the chair, this is what we do each year, is put up the proposed work programme, so we've got something to align with, and basically it's what you can expect to see each quarter. And obviously we don't know what audits are occurring or don't at any one time, apart from our annual audit. So sometimes in different parts of the business we pick up that there's audits occurring and bring that the results of that audit into this audit and risk committee. So if there's anything people want to add, and you with your experience and may have further items that you might want to add. I'll just take questions.
Thank you. The questions for Sue to begin with? None? Oh, Mayor Jason?
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Sue, look, this is very, very clear reporting. Thank you very much for this. On page 86 of the agenda, I can't give you another page number, sorry, it's just page 86 of the total agenda here. Under the second point on the risk management table, we're talking here about the risk management framework update report, and also that once a year the full risk register will be presented. Could we please have clarity for when the full risk register gets presented? And is it like, oh, we present that in June, so it goes into the annual report, or is it presented in September because it's near the start of the year? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So through the chair, we haven't presented the whole risk register yet. Because of the fact that Graham's still working through it, and there's a couple of areas that he hasn't, with I think it is flood waters and wastewater that haven't been completed as yet. So we haven't presented the full risk register, and so we're trying to see how the framework's working for us. So it isn't well embedded yet. So we're thinking that it's going to be, it won't be likely to be this year that we may have it towards the end of this year. So I can't give you a month at the moment, potentially next quarter that we'd have that. But and the risk framework would probably come after that, because then we'd see how we've been working with the new framework.
Thank you. So for this table, or the next time we see this table, if that were all kind of clarified into this, because the whole matter of risk, in theory, risk is a third of what this committee is supposed to be looking at. Sorry, and audit, risk, finance. That three legs on the stool perspective. I'm just being very simple here, simplistic. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. But thank you, Sue, for answering that question very clearly. Thank you. And I'm aware it's a work in progress. And so well done. Thanks.
Thanks, Sue, and thanks, Mayor Jason. Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Sue, this is very well presented in terms of the work program. I think that makes it very clear. Just a couple of points on it. Under one, you've got internal audit, and in December of this year, you'll have the areas being considered, etc., and obviously a report to this committee. But if you go further down the next page, you've got another line with internal audit where the committee will review a work plan of audits and ensure CE addresses the issues identified in any reports. But you actually don't have a dot when this is going to be, what month this, or what quarterly meeting this is going to be presented to. Is that just an oversight, or is it outside the current time frame you're looking at?
I think it must have been, so that is under annual financial reporting. Is that what you're talking about, under 3, or
it's
on page 87?
Under 2, under 2, you'll see it comes right at the bottom of the page under 2. It says internal audit, and then the comment is the committee will review, and then there's no actual dot associated with any of the quarterly meetings.
I might come back to you with when we're planning to do that. So I've obviously missed that because the internal audit's on the one page, and so I think that would probably review work or plan of audits and ensure CE addresses the issues identified in any reports. So that's really not, in fact, what we're doing is we're making sure it's done by this committee every quarter. And so I think it is covered by that, but we should be, it probably should be after each quarter that we discuss it as a team to make sure that people are actually working on and doing those improvements.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it should be a quarterly report. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll put that on the task. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Anna.
Yeah, I was just following on from that. My understanding of that was that there's two different things happening there. One is that report that we get every agenda of sort of summarising all the sort of reports that have had recommendations and where we're at with them. And then the other one earlier on is specific kind of deep dive internal audit function. So my understanding was they're two different things. So maybe it might just be a question of naming on those two different reports. Or maybe I'm completely misunderstanding.
Yeah, through the chair, the understanding would be even if we had an internal audit, it would still go on the same one report to be reported on, so that if we get an internal audit, there'll be recommendations. Those recommendations will come through and council will see those on the list until they've completed.
Okay, thanks.
Now, just clarification. So is this coming to every committee meeting, every quarter, this report? Or?
No, it's we only give it annually.
Yeah, okay, because I'm going to request that we actually bring it every committee meeting, and it's actually a rolling 12 months, so we can actually tweak the work program on a sort of a rolling basis, because as things change, we might want to actually bring something forward or put something new on. And Anna, Councillor Anna's already mentioned something that I'd want to see eventually, once we've got our risk framework on, is actually doing some deep dives into our risks once we've finished going through our risk register process. So that's, and that's to me is why I think it's really important that we see this on a quarterly basis. I don't think we need to debate it in detail every quarter, but it's more saying as well, this is what was, this is still our program, this is what we've changed, this is what we're bringing forward, I think is actually invaluable.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll do that.
Thank you. I think I got a thumbs up from Mayor Jason. Thank you. So any further discussion? We go back to the recommendation. Can I have a mover for that? Oh, I've just lost everybody. Right. It's the problem when you've got too many screens.
And Mr. Chair, should we also put in that this report be returned to every meeting, be a regular report?
Wouldn't hurt.
For the avoidance of doubt?
Yes. Yep. So you're moving A.
I'll second.
And Councillor Peter is seconding. And
B, that we're needing some clever words here.
Yep. My suggestion is, if I can be so bold, is that this the proposed work program be brought back to each quarterly meeting. Not every meeting, because we might actually have a special meeting.
Would you say a standing item?
Okay, standing item, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Work program be a standing item on each quarterly agenda meeting. Yep. Thank you. You happy with that?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Carried. Can I have a mover that we move into public excluded?
I'm happy to.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against. And what we might do is, I'm 7 minutes late in terms of the schedule. We'll stop for about 10, adjourn for 10 minutes, and probably come back just after make it a bit longer, 11:15. Actually 20 past